are getting a 1-month exemption from the president's tariffs. But other businesses haven't been as lucky. The owner of a steel company in Canada told Red O'Keefe that just the threat of tariffs impacted his business, and it's only gotten worse since they've been implemented.
You may not feel it yet, but across Canada, a quiet exit is underway. Buyers are abandoning U.S. car brands they once swore by, leaving once reliable names behind. It's not about quality alone, it's about cost, image, and trust. What's vanishing isn't just vehicles, it's decades of loyalty and consumer confidence. If you've ever driven American, this matters to you. The landscape is changing, and by the time everyone's talking about it, it might already be too late. So what's driving Canadians away? What brands are falling fastest? And most importantly, is your car next? Buick. Back in the day, Buick was a name that carried real weight on both sides of the border. It was the go-to badge for middle-class professionals who wanted more comfort than a Chevrolet without stepping all the way up to Cadillac prices. In cities like Toronto, Calgary, and Winnipeg, spotting a Regal or a LaCrosse in a suburban driveway was as common as seeing a Tim Hortons on the corner. It had presence, it had pedigree, and most importantly, it had customer trust. But these days, Buick's slow fade from the Canadian market feels more like a disappearing act than a strategic retreat. Sales have nosedived year after year, and many consumers would be hard-pressed to name a single model in their current lineup. If you walked through a Canadian dealership lot in 2024, chances are you would find more tumbleweeds than test drives when it comes to Buick. It is a brand that has lost its voice and its relevance. The reasons for this decline are numerous, and most of them come down to one painful truth. Buick no longer knows what it is trying to be. It used to occupy a sweet spot between premium and practical, giving buyers a taste of luxury without the full sticker shock. But as Japanese and Korean brands mastered that same formula, then improved on it, Buick simply stopped evolving. In the Canadian market, where buyers are value-focused and climate-conscious, Buick's identity crisis proved fatal. The newer models, such as the Encore GX and Envision, are technically crossovers, but in a sea of better-equipped, more stylish alternatives from Hyundai, Toyota, and Mazda, they barely register. They are not particularly sporty, nor are they exceptionally luxurious. They are just there, and when Canadian families are shelling out $30,000 or more for a vehicle, just there does not cut it. Another key factor? The brand's aging demographic. Buick has spent decades cultivating loyalty among older drivers, but that strategy backfired in a market like Canada, where younger buyers dominate and demand fresh tech, hybrid options, and rugged practicality. Most millennials in Vancouver or Ottawa would sooner take public transit than roll up in a Buick. Buick's marketing presence in Canada is equally ghost-like. No bold ad campaigns, no viral moments, just a faint whisper in a marketplace that is growing louder and more competitive by the year. That lack of visibility compounds its problems. Out of sight, out of mind, and out of favor. Even General Motors seems to be treating Buick like a quiet room at a loud party. There, but not really part of the action. As of late 2024, the number of standalone Buick dealerships in Canada has dropped to an all-time low, and the few that remain are often paired with other, more successful GM brands just to stay afloat. So what is next for Buick in the Great White North? Unless the brand pulls off a full-scale reinvention and reconnects with modern Canadian buyers, its future might already be parked permanently. Shift gears from forgotten elegance to full-throttle bravado, because the next brand never lacked volume, only direction. If you're already feeling surprised by how fast these American brands are slipping, hit that like button to help more people see what's happening. Which brand do you think will survive the storm or vanish next? Drop your take in the comments below. We're reading everything, and your insight might just spark the next debate. Dodge. There was a time when the Dodge badge represented something truly distinct on Canadian roads, a roar of American muscle cutting through the calm. From the snarling Dodge Charger to the beastly Challenger and the no-nonsense Durango, Dodge made vehicles that turned heads, snapped necks, and made no apologies. That brash identity gave it a cult following both in the United States and up north, especially among gearheads and adrenaline junkies looking for torque-heavy rides. But the same identity that once gave Dodge its edge is now slowly steering it toward the shoulder of the road in Canada. Canadian drivers have been shifting gears, literally and figuratively. In a country where winter hits hard and fuel prices hit even harder, the no-compromise, gas-guzzling attitude of Dodge vehicles has grown tiresome. A standard Dodge muscle car doesn't just burn rubber, it burns through wallets, especially when gas prices hover around $1.70 per liter in cities like Vancouver and Montreal. That aggressive styling, V8 rumble, and rear-wheel drive layout that once defined Dodge now feel out of touch with Canadian sensibilities. And then there is the matter of aging platforms. Many Dodge vehicles are still built on designs that trace their roots back to the early 2000s. models. For instance, the Charger and Challenger have been riding on a platform that was originally developed in collaboration with Daimler Chrysler well over a decade ago. While American buyers might still cling to nostalgia, Canadian consumers tend to lean toward efficiency, innovation, and long-term practicality. Unfortunately for Dodge, new is a language the brand seems reluctant to speak. To make matters worse, Dodge's limited lineup makes it especially vulnerable in the Canadian market. When you essentially sell 3 or 4 core models, many of which are variants of the same aging concept, you don't leave buyers with many reasons to walk into a showroom. Crossovers and electrified options are rapidly gaining traction in provinces like British Columbia and Quebec, and Dodge is simply not keeping up. Even its plug-in hybrid offerings are either non-existent or lagging far behind competitors from South Korea, Japan, and even other American automakers. Another glaring issue is insurance costs. In Canada, high-performance Dodge vehicles frequently rank among the most expensive to insure. Between theft rates, accident statistics, and repair costs, many Canadian insurance companies see a Dodge muscle car as a risk waiting to happen. That kind of financial baggage is something Canadian buyers are becoming more and more unwilling to carry. In terms of brand perception, Dodge has also struggled to evolve. The rugged bad boy image might sell posters, but it doesn't sell well in an era where practicality, safety, and tech-forward design dominate the conversation. When suburban families are shopping for a reliable winter vehicle or a daily commuter, a 2-ton muscle car is not exactly top of mind. As a result, Canadian sales of Dodge have been shrinking year over year. In markets once dominated by Charger patrol vehicles and Challenger weekend warriors, the silence is becoming deafening. Swap horsepower for heritage, because the next name on the list once led the pack. Now it's just trying to keep pace. Chrysler. Drift through any Canadian suburb in the late 1990s or early 2000s, and odds are you would have spotted a Chrysler minivan or sedan parked in just about every other driveway. Back then, the Chrysler nameplate stood tall, a fixture of practicality and American design. It was the brand Canadian families turned to when they needed space, comfort, and something that did not carry the premium price tag of European competitors. Fast forward to the present day, and the story has changed drastically. Chrysler is barely hanging on, limping behind while the competition speeds ahead. Chrysler's decline in Canada has been both gradual and unmistakable. One of the most pressing issues is its razor-thin lineup. As of 2024, the brand essentially sells just 2 models in the Canadian market, the Pacifica minivan and the aging 300 sedan. That's it! 2 options in a landscape filled with dozens of flexible, fuel-efficient, and tech-forward choices from Japanese and Korean automakers. Chrysler simply does not offer enough to stay relevant anymore. The Chrysler Pacifica, while still one of the better minivan options available, faces fierce competition from brands like Toyota and Honda, both of which offer hybrid variants that outperform the Pacifica in fuel economy and long-term value. Canadian buyers, increasingly focused on environmental impact and fuel costs, have shown more interest in hybrid and electric vehicles. Chrysler's plug-in hybrid Pacifica is a decent attempt to bridge the gap, but it has not been enough to stop the bleeding. Sales have continued to drop year after year, and the numbers tell a cold truth. The brand is fading. Meanwhile, the Chrysler 300, a once iconic full-size sedan, is now viewed as an outdated dinosaur. With its design largely unchanged since the early 2010s and its platform even older, the car feels like a relic on Canadian streets where buyers are looking for innovation, connectivity, and real-time driving tech. Most sedans are already losing traction in the Canadian market, but the 300's dated look and lack of modern features make it a hard sell, even among die-hard traditionalists. Then there's the brand perception problem. Chrysler, once viewed as an upscale alternative to Ford or Chevrolet, now struggles with an identity crisis. It is not luxurious enough to compete with the likes of Lexus or Audi, yet not affordable or reliable enough to challenge Toyota or Hyundai. That awkward middle ground has left Chrysler stranded, especially in a market as value-driven as Canada. Shoppers there are known for being smart, detail-oriented, and forward-thinking with their purchases, traits that don't match Chrysler's stagnant product offering. Dealership presence is another red flag. The number of Chrysler-branded dealerships in Canada has steadily declined over the past decade. In some provinces, it is easier to find a Tesla charging station than a showroom with a new Chrysler vehicle on display. That kind of invisibility is never good for business, and just like that, the once proud Chrysler name has slipped quietly into the shadows. Drift from fading heritage to rugged ambition. Our next entry might look tough, but Canadian drivers are no longer buying the act. GMC. Not too long ago, spotting a bold, chrome-grilled truck or sport utility vehicle from GMC barreling down a snowy road in Alberta or towing a trailer in rural Ontario was about as Canadian as maple syrup and hockey. Built with toughness and premium appeal in mind, GMC marketed itself as the upscale alternative for hard-working folks who wanted a little more polish with their payload. For years, the brand enjoyed strong loyalty from tradespeople, ranchers, and suburban families alike. But in recent times, the once mighty image of General Motors Company, more commonly known as GMC, is showing serious cracks in the Canadian market. One of the clearest signs of trouble is how fiercely the competition has outpaced GMC across nearly every category. Back in the early 2010s, GMC had a strong edge with models like the Sierra and Acadia. But today, Canadian buyers are increasingly choosing Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai when shopping for reliable sport utility vehicles or trucks. These brands consistently outperform GMC when it comes to long-term dependability, fuel economy, and tech integration, all factors that weigh heavily on the minds of Canadian consumers. In cities like Winnipeg and Montreal, where snowfall and freezing temperatures are part of daily life for nearly half the year, drivers demand vehicles that can handle harsh conditions without racking up service bills. Unfortunately for GMC, too many Canadian drivers have grown weary of what they see as style over substance. Flashy trims and bold front ends are not enough when the real-world performance does not keep pace with the expectations set by the price tag. When you are charging nearly $70,000 for a fully loaded pickup, buyers expect more than badge appeal. They expect durability. In recent years, Canadian buyers have become far more strategic in their purchasing decisions. With inflation, fuel prices, and cost of ownership all on the rise, flashy badges alone are no longer enough. GMC's professional-grade promise sounds appealing, but increasingly, it feels like just another marketing slogan without substance. Another challenge GMC faces is perception. While it tries to position itself as more premium than Chevrolet, but not quite as luxury-focused as Cadillac, that in-between status creates confusion. Canadian consumers are practical buyers. They want value that is easy to understand and benefits that are clear. GMC's message, professional grade, sounds strong but often does not translate into real, noticeable advantages when stacked up against other brands' offerings. The average buyer is asking, what am I actually paying extra for? And too often, the answer feels vague. Leasing and financing trends in Canada have also played a role in GMC's decline. With the rising cost of living and tighter credit conditions, more Canadians are leaning toward vehicles that offer the most efficiency per dollar, whether through hybrid options, extended warranties, or better resale value. In all those categories, GMC struggles to keep up. Its limited hybrid presence, high insurance premiums, and spotty resale numbers leave the brand at a clear disadvantage. Even the dealership experience is not what it used to be. In recent years, several GMC dealerships across Canada have either downsized, merged, or closed altogether, particularly in smaller towns. That loss of visibility and access further accelerates the brand's fall from grace. Now, if GMC's middle-of-the-road approach is struggling to find traction, let go of chrome and clout, because what comes next is a brand built on power that's losing traction fast in the Great White North. Ford. Roaring across the Canadian prairies or hauling boats out of icy lakes in the Maritimes, the Ford nameplate once symbolized rugged dependability and all-American muscle with just the right touch of family practicality. For decades, the Ford Motor Company dominated Canadian driveways with bestsellers like the F-Series pickup trucks and the Explorer sport utility vehicle. From coast to coast, from the oil fields of Alberta to the suburbs of Ontario, Ford was trusted by tradespeople, families, and thrill-seekers alike. However, despite its enduring presence, cracks are starting to show in Ford's armor north of the border, and Canadian drivers are beginning to notice. A growing issue for Ford in Canada stems from the very thing that made it popular, its trucks. While the Ford F-150 remains one of the best-selling vehicles in North America, Canadians are growing increasingly disillusioned with the high cost of ownership. A fully equipped Ford F-150 Limited can easily push past $100,000 after taxes and fees. In a nation where cost of living is climbing rapidly and fuel prices average more than $1.75 per liter in major provinces, the thirst of a full-size pickup no longer fits the budget of the average family or contractor. Then there's the reliability debate, one Ford would rather avoid. Canadian automotive forums and reviews have been flooded in recent years with complaints about chronic issues in Ford's newer models, transmission failures, electrical glitches, and infotainment bugs, especially with the Sync 3 and Sync 4 systems. For a country that endures long winters and needs vehicles that start every time and stay warm without issue, Reliability is not optional, it's essential. When Canadian buyers begin doubting whether their brand new Ford will hold up through the next snowstorm, that loyalty starts to erode quickly. Electrification is another area where Ford is facing a unique set of challenges in Canada. While the Ford Mustang Mach-E and the all-electric F-150 Lightning have generated excitement in the United States, adoption has been slower in Canada. Charging infrastructure remains uneven, especially in rural regions, and cold weather significantly affects battery performance. Canadians have been cautious with electric vehicle adoption, and Ford's limited range combined with its premium pricing has made some buyers look elsewhere, often to Asian manufacturers that offer hybrid alternatives with better cold weather performance and lower upfront costs. Another hit to Ford's image in Canada is the departure of some smaller, more affordable models. With the cancellation of the Ford Fiesta and Ford Focus in North America, budget-conscious Canadians lost two of their favorite compact options. What remains is a portfolio filled with large crossovers and pickups, vehicles that are increasingly out of step with urban and younger Canadian buyers looking for efficient, easy-to-park transportation. In short, Ford still sells in Canada, but the foundation beneath that success is beginning to shift. As prices rise, issues persist, and competitors pull ahead, Ford's long-standing dominance is slowly being chipped away. Forget muscle and mainstream. Our next contender aimed for quiet luxury, but barely made a sound across Canadian roads. Lincoln. Once seen as the understated choice for Canadian professionals and retirees, Lincoln carried a quiet kind of prestige, refined, reserved, and never one to shout for attention. It was the brand that suggested you had made it, just without the need to shout about it. In the early 2010s, Lincoln crossovers like the MKX and the MKZ sedan could be found cruising through upscale neighborhoods in Calgary, Ottawa, or Vancouver. But today, that same Lincoln presence is fading from view, as Canadian drivers steadily abandon the brand, once considered a tasteful alternative to European imports. The problem with Lincoln in Canada is not just one thing, it is the result of several slow-building failures that have culminated in a full-blown identity crisis. While Lincoln has tried to reinvent itself in recent years with models like the Nautilus, Corsair, and Aviator, Canadian consumers have responded with a collective shrug. The vehicles themselves are not bad. In fact, many of them ride smoothly, feature plush interiors, and offer strong performance numbers. But in a competitive Canadian marketplace, being not bad is not nearly good enough. Part of Lincoln's struggle lies in its branding. Many Canadians still associate the name with large sedans their parents or grandparents drove. The attempt to modernize its lineup has not been matched with a successful rebranding strategy. Even with the shift from confusing three-letter names to more distinctive ones, like switching MKX to Nautilus, Lincoln has failed to make an emotional or aspirational connection with the modern Canadian buyer. When Canadians think luxury, they think Lexus, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, or even Genesis. Lincoln simply does not come up in the conversation anymore. Another nail in the coffin is pricing. Many of Lincoln's new vehicles are priced in the same range as their more established competitors from Germany and Japan. But Canadian buyers, especially in major metro areas, expect more for their money when choosing a luxury badge. Advanced tech, hybrid powertrains, prestige, and resale value all play into that equation. Unfortunately for Lincoln, its vehicles tend to underdeliver in at least one of those categories, sometimes more. Resale value in particular is a sore point. After just a few years on the road, most Lincoln vehicles lose value at a rate faster than many of their competitors, making them less appealing for both leasing and buying. Then there is the dealership network, or lack thereof. In provinces like British Columbia and Nova Scotia, the number of Lincoln-certified dealerships has shrunk considerably. That means longer drives for service and fewer places to test drive or explore new models. Canadian consumers place a high value on accessibility and service, and Lincoln's shrinking footprint is not helping its cause. Canadian luxury buyers are not only after smooth rides and soft-touch dashboards, they want innovation, bold design, and long-term value. Lincoln may offer a quiet, elegant driving experience, but it lacks the energy to keep up with the shifting tastes of Canadian drivers. We've arrived at the brand that once ruled them all. Until Canada started rewriting the rules, we've only got one more name left, and it's a brand almost every Canadian once trusted. If you're finding this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to subscribe right now. We dive deep into the real stories behind the car market every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Hit that button before the final reveal. Chevrolet. At one point in time, the Chevrolet badge was practically stitched into the fabric of Canadian life. From family sedans in suburban Ontario to hard-working trucks in rural Saskatchewan, Chevrolet, commonly referred to as Chevy, was not just a brand, it was a default choice. You needed a car? You got a Chevrolet. For decades, it dominated Canadian sales charts with models like the Malibu, Impala, Equinox, and of course, the ever-popular Silverado. But in recent years, this American icon has seen a dramatic decline in its northern neighbor's favor, losing ground in nearly every major segment. There is no denying that Chevrolet still sells vehicles in Canada, but the slope it is sliding down is steep. Canadian drivers are shifting toward practicality, fuel efficiency, and long-term reliability, areas where Chevrolet is increasingly struggling to compete. Take the compact car segment, for example. Vehicles like the Chevrolet Cruze were once strong contenders in Canada's urban centers. However, as early as the year 2019, Chevrolet began pulling out of that category altogether, discontinuing the Cruze entirely. That left a gap that brands like Toyota and Honda were more than happy to fill with the Corolla and Civic. In the sedan market, Chevrolet's presence has also shriveled. The Malibu, which used to be a staple in Canadian rental fleets and family garages, has been quietly phased out in many areas due to shrinking demand and a lack of innovation. Its tech offerings lag behind, and its resale value is less than appealing. Two factors that matter a great deal to Canadian consumers who expect longevity and smart investments. When you compare the Malibu to offerings from Hyundai or Subaru, the difference in perceived value becomes glaringly obvious. The story is not much better in the sport utility vehicle segment. While Chevrolet's Equinox and Traverse models have tried to hold their ground, they have been consistently outclassed by more stylish, better equipped, and often more affordable competitors from Asia. In cities like Vancouver and Montreal, where buyers are younger, tech-savvier, and increasingly eco-conscious, Chevrolet's lack of competitive hybrid or electric options has put the brand at a clear disadvantage. Even the Chevrolet Bolt, its foray into electric vehicles, faced recalls and range concerns that scared off many potential Canadian adopters. Chevrolet's issues extend into the truck segment too. Though the Silverado remains a top seller, its grip on the Canadian market has loosened. Rising prices, coupled with concerns over long-term dependability and higher maintenance costs, have driven some buyers toward Ford and Ram alternatives, while others are even considering Japanese makes like the Toyota Tundra. That shift would have been unthinkable 20 years ago, but today it is becoming more common. Dealership closings in smaller provinces and service inconsistency have also weakened Chevrolet's once unshakable brand loyalty in Canada. Combine that with aggressive leasing deals from competitors and a growing distrust in some of Chevrolet's long-term quality, and the trend becomes impossible to ignore. Chevrolet may still be an American institution, but north of the border, it is now more of a memory than a movement, a legacy fading in real time. If these brands shocked you, just know this shift isn't slowing down. The cars we grew up with, trusted, and drove across borders are being left behind. But this is just one piece of the bigger picture. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next wave. Drop a comment with the brand you think still deserves Canada's trust. And if you found value in this, give it a like. It helps more drivers see what's really happening.